So it looks like SpaceX has teamed up with the Pentagon to do what the United States government does: deliver weapons around the world in record time. Let's talk about it. What's going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. And of course, as always, I'm your humble host, Niko House. This segment today, we're going to talk about how Elon Musk's SpaceX has just teamed up with the Pentagon, bro. The Pentagon. I know, surprise, surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise. I'm going to tell you why in a second. But they teamed up with the Pentagon in order to deliver weapons around the world in record time. In this article from futurism.com, from Dan Robitsky, they report that SpaceX and the Pentagon have just signed a contract to jointly develop a new rocket that can launch into space and deliver up to 80 tons of cargo and weaponry anywhere in the world in just 1 hour. Tests on the rocket are expected to begin as early as next year, Business Insider reports. It's expected to shuttle weapons around the world 15 times faster than any existing craft like the US C-17 Globemaster. Think about moving the equivalent of a C-17 payload anywhere on the globe in less than an hour, General Stephen Lyons, head of the U.S. Transportation Command, said to at a conference on Wednesday. Now, the new military contract goes on a report. The new military contract that SpaceX is leaning hard into shows and is evidence that SpaceX is leaning hard into military partnerships. Earlier this week, the private space company won a contract with Military Space Development Agency to manufacture 4 missile tracking systems. Prior to that, the Army approached SpaceX about turning its constellation of Starlink broadband satellites into a new military navigation network, and Space Force officials let slip earlier this year that they were already working closely with SpaceX after awarding the company with another contract in August. Wow. This is so surprising. We never would have expected this. Another program from another billionaire that started all of his billions, his relatively ridiculous amounts of billions, from government subsidies, and then all of a sudden the government wants the money they invested into the program. I just can't believe this. Except for, I absolutely can't believe this. And if you understand the history of the vulture capitalism, I should say, and the government's investment specifically into the corporations that you all know and love today, then you understand that this was a natural conclusion. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at one's ability to invest into SpaceX, because this is a pretty successful program. A lot of people like myself, once we hear that the government wants to invest a bunch of money, maybe you would want to invest into something like that, because clearly whenever the government invests into something, everything just happens to be a guaranteed victory for some weird reason. So how could you invest into SpaceX? Well, short and long of it is, you can't do it. It's a private company. Cannot do it. Now, how are they able to do this if you couldn't invest in it? Well, Google Infidelity invested $1 billion in a company who just woke up one day was worth $1 billion. I know what you're thinking. Huh? Why would Google just randomly invest $1 billion into SpaceX? Now, it's like it's SpaceX and Elon Musk, and like you're like, oh man, he's super successful. But like, then you also kind of realize, well, he wouldn't have ever been that successful without the government subsidies. So is he really a good businessman? Or if you're Google, you realize that doesn't matter. You're going to invest the government tells you to do. Why? Because, well, Google is largely successful because of its in-q-tel investments from the intelligence community, investments from the government. Because, well, Google Earth, for those of you who don't know, was started in 2003, I want to say. I want to say it was 2003. Give me a sec. Let me make sure. I don't want to mislead y'all. But I think it was started in 2003. That's when in-q-tel, the CIA, venture capitalism firm, invested. No, Google Earth isn't. My apologies. Keyhole had In-Q-Tel invested into them in 2003 to create. We don't know. It was just casual. We don't know. It was just super weird coincidence that they happened to create the program that we now know as Google Earth. Now, before Keyhole was able to create Google Earth with all that lovely money from In-Q-Tel that was invested into them in 2003, in 2004, just right around the corner, Google, they be using those connections to predict before anyone else could just how successful Keyhole would be. And In-Q-Tel was so kind to let Google buy Keyhole, or Alphabet, if you will, the parent company, buy Keyhole in 2004, just around the corner after they just invested into them. And then, of course, subsequently, we all know how that turned out, right? Google Earth is a thing now. And the NGA, so it's like the government's global what do they call it? It's basically, that's the organization that was created when Google Earth was created, and they used the technology from Google Earth to look at people around the world. And I don't know if you know this, but Google Earth is not allowed in a lot of countries because it poses a national security risk. Because it was created for the U.S. government. I know y'all like to use it to spy on your little ex-boyfriends and girlfriends, but it's a national security risk for almost every other country. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, because the chickens always come home to roost. They didn't invest into Keyhole and then allow Google to buy them because they didn't expect something in return. Just like they didn't invest into Amazon, give Amazon all those government subsidies just to not have Amazon buy Washington Post and then push a bunch of government propaganda. Just like they didn't give Elon Musk almost $4.9 billion in subsidies. That's the most recent report since 2015, or up until 2015. Gave him $4.9 billion total in subsidies, Elon Musk. Just to turn around and not ask for their comeuppance. Because there is, technically speaking, one way you can invest into SpaceX. If you're trying to get on that little weapons transportation train, you can invest in the SpaceX by buying a little piece of Google. Because guess who the only company that just can invest into SpaceX is only Google. So if you own a piece of Google, then you're technically owning a piece of SpaceX, and obviously if SpaceX has their stock increased, so does Google. So does Google. And now Elon Musk said that he doesn't want to make SpaceX a publicly traded company because he wants to get the mission complete first. Fool, when you was delivering explosive battery after dying Tesla, after making no money, you didn't give a damn at that point back in the day about I just want to get the mission accomplished first. I'm going to use billions of your tax dollars to get the mission accomplished, but I don't want you to be able to publicly invest. I just don't want to let you down. But don't worry, you're paying for it because you got all his subsidies. Isn't that super weird? I don't know if y'all have noticed that, but there's billionaires, and then there are these ridiculously insane super billionaires like Bezos, like Zuckerberg, like Elon Musk. It's a super weird coincidence also that all of them had, in some way, form, or fashion, In-Q-Tel invest in their companies. And in some way, form, or fashion have been used specifically, directly or indirectly, to do the federal government's bidding. I don't know if all those things are connected. It's almost as if you follow the money, you know what the conclusion is going to be. I've been saying that the threat of SpaceX it's like SpaceX is not it's cool, whatever, we're going to space, but that's not what it's about. It's about a military advantage. That's what it's always been about. Even Space Force is a military advantage. And after getting a bunch of government subsidies, after Google, one of In-Q-Tel's little companies, spent all that money on SpaceX, all of a sudden, they're getting a bunch of government military contracts as well. And no one else can invest, because if you're smart, like if you're a super billionaire, you would pull a lot of money together to invest in the SpaceX so that you can eventually control some of what SpaceX does, and of course make a lot of money doing so, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it would be a gold mine. Every billionaire would know this. Like, even every millionaire, like all of them know. But of course they can't. In fact, they cannot control the outcome of SpaceX at all, because the government owns it. And the government is now giving itself contracts, basically. That's what's happening. 15 billion. That is the budget that In-Q-Tel was given. And now nobody has any idea what they've done with the money, because In-Q-Tel, according to the law, doesn't have to actually disclose anything they do, really. Because it's for the government. But they can invest in your stock market, but you cannot know anything that In-Q-Tel is doing. How does that feel? When people try, these same government entities will try and pretend as if Iran, we were so scared, we're so terrified because Iran might develop one nuclear weapon one day, even though we have hundreds of them. That Russia might just randomly decide to spy on the country and affect the outcome of the election, despite the fact that we've done that to them and hundreds of other nations. They're so worried about weapons of mass destruction. Bro, we are trying to create a vehicle to transport weapons of mass destruction around the world. In hours. No, excuse me, less than an hour. In minutes. In minutes. Imagine what else SpaceX will be able to do. They're using, once again, so Google Earth, which they obviously, they have a whole organization within the government, the NGA, dedicated, geospatial, that's what's called. It's like National Geospatial Administration or so, something like that. Basically, that's what it does. So they use that. Then, of course, with drones, just now, they use that to map. And then, of course, the drones go and attack, because they have all this access to all this geospatial technology that Google Earth provided them. And then now they have SpaceX, which is probably going to use a lot of that technology from Google Earth. That's going to make sure those weapons can get delivered even quicker, and we can wreak havoc in more ways than we've ever have available to us before. And just once again, the military invest in all these companies, and then the companies get military contracts from our money. It's like basically everybody can spend our money but us. It's never spent to improve anyone's lives. It's always spent to end people's lives. This is absolutely unacceptable. I feel like more people should be talking about this. Shout out to Whitney Webb. I follow her on Twitter, and that's where I saw this. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I could, but I'm just like, wow, this should kind of be big news. Because this contract, by the way, if I think all goes well, it would be done by Biden, or it would be fulfilled by Biden if he won. And Biden hasn't said a damn thing about this, has he? That's super weird. It's almost as if SpaceX was started under the Obama administration with the full intention on having a bunch of military contractors give money to SpaceX to bomb people. It's almost as if this was Biden's intention Obama's intention when he allowed the government to invest all that money, because the intelligence community is under the executive branch. It's almost as if that was his intention the entire time. That's why Biden hasn't said anything about this. It's almost like that. So like this video, share this video, raise the alarm about this. This is a big deal. This should be a major topic of discussion during these debates, especially for any anti-imperialists out there. It has not been discussed. And I hope that you all bring that discussion to the forefront. So like this video, share this video, subscribe, leave a comment below, but always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace. If you like that segment of Mikasa Sukasa, don't forget to like the video and smash that subscribe button. Want access to members only live streams, behind the scenes footage, and other premium content? Well, you can endorse us on Rockman Premium, become a patron through Patreon, or you can sign up for the MCSC Premium membership through YouTube. All the links are in the description below. But hey, more than anything else,
More than anything else.
More than anything else,
More than anything else.
always remember,
Find your balance.
find your balance.
Find your balance.
Find your balance. Find your balance.
Find your balance. Find your balance.
Always remember, more than anything else, find your balance.
peace.